Hello everyone, Razorblade Mango here, and today I just wanted to talk about the updates to Marathon and Bungie's precarious financial situation that the game and the developer finds themselves in. So I already did a big stream a few weeks ago talking about some of the stuff that had happened with the game at launch, end of March, and then for most of the first half of April. However, last week was Sony's big fiscal year presentation that they have to give to their shareholders. And one of the big items that everybody assumed was going to be spoken about was Marathon and Bungie as well. The big headline to come out of this report was that Bungie has taken another impairment loss of about 88.6 billion yen, which translates to roughly $565 million in US dollars, on Bungie's value as an asset within PlayStation and Sony overall. And this was significant because Sony had already depreciated Bungie's value by about $200 million last year. I believe is during the second quarter of that fiscal year. So the depreciation total in a time frame of a single financial fiscal year was $765 million off of Bungie. And for those who remember, Sony paid an eye-watering near $3.7 billion for Bungie back in 2022. And even now, I personally can't fathom how Sony thinks Bungie is still worth about $2.9 billion. I can't believe that. And on top of that, during one of the earnings calls that they had, Sony made some statements on Marathon as of information reported, with the fiscal year ending back in March 31st. So some of the things in this quote that I'm going to read out are a little strange given everything that has happened in April and now the beginning of May with Marathon. And they also talked about their stated commitment to Marathon, to their shareholders. So I believe this is coming from Lin Tao, who's the big chief financial officer at Sony. So, quote, "In our studio business, earnings from Bungie's title portfolio did not reach our expectations, so we downwardly revised the business plan and impaired the full amount of the fixed assets related to Bungie," which is the thing that we talked about earlier with the depreciation in value. "Player reception to Marathon is strong, receiving a Metacritic score of 82 and more than 90% of the player reviews on Steam being positive. Engagement metrics such as retention also remain at a high level. Going forward, we aim to improve the performance of the game by working to retain highly engaged core users," and there's that word engagement again, "through the introduction of additional content, further improvements in the gameplay experience, and expansion of the user base," end quote. People have to keep in mind that she is talking about information related to Marathon and statistics from it ending in March of 31st. So obviously more than 90% of players are not positive on Steam anymore. I think it's more like 83-84% right now. And engagement metrics such as retention also remain at a high level. That is clearly not, unless she is specifically talking about the most hardcore of hardcore people at Marathon putting like 100 plus hours into the game at launch. That might be true, but even then it's this deceptive language that they have, that vague and deceptive language that they have to put out in order to make this game look more like a success to their shareholders, even for the time frame ending on the 31st of March. But clearly the evidence shows that engagement metrics such as retention have dropped off a fucking cliff at this point. Also, what I find really interesting is that this report lacks two key pieces of information. One, it lacks how many copies Marathon sold, which, as I stated in the live stream, obviously means that this game underperformed. Because if Sony is unwilling to give out this piece of information, then the number is not good. Because, as you will recall, anytime there is a considered success within PlayStation or Sony, they are willing to put it on their financial statement to their shareholders. Astrobot, they were very clearly proud of that 1.5 million copies sold within 2 months. Helldivers 2, they were very clearly proud of that. Ghost of Yote, very clearly happy with that. No mention of how many units sold with Marathon. Clearly unhappy with that. Number 2, and this to me is the most, I would say is probably the most damning. Not a single mention of Destiny 2 and its future. Not one. Not in the visual presentation, not in the earnings call that came after that. There is not one single mention of Bungie's current flagship IP. So, although Bungie is not shutting down anytime soon, and Marathon is not going the way of Concord or Highguard, Bungie is still in deep shit right now. I mean, this is just, there's really no other way to spin this other than this is bad. And it is definitely a very bleak outlook for the future of Destiny 2, which, in my opinion, should be the game that they prioritize more than Marathon, but, you know, Sony and Bungie don't really have the best reputation right now for making smart decisions. So here are a few things that I see happening with the information that has come out from this financial report for the fiscal year. 1, layoffs. There will definitely be layoffs. I will be stunned if there are no layoffs this year. Like whether it's the end of 2026 or the financial year that ends in March 31st of 2027. I think there are going to be layoffs. I think there are going to be like big restructuring efforts at Bungie, especially in light of reports that more Bungie employees are now being moved to Marathon over Destiny 2, which is not a good thing for Destiny. 2, I think there's going to be a mass exodus of leadership and talent once the final retention bonus payments are made in the summer, including current Destiny 2 director Tyson Green, current Marathon game director Joe Ziegler, current Bungie head Justin Truman, and longtime Bungie OG Jason Jones. I think all 4 of those dudes are going to be out the building once that final check comes in from Sony, because I don't, and I said this on the live stream as well, I don't know why anyone would want to work at a company like Bungie where their backs are so constantly against the wall. They put themselves in so many terrible financial and cultural positions, and it's just like for the punishment that must take on their mental health and stress levels and physical health, it can't be worth it. I wouldn't want to work there. I definitely would not want to work there, even if I was getting paid like millions of dollars from Sony. It's not worth it, in my opinion. Number 3, I think Destiny 2's future content will be significantly scaled back, and the game will be put on some kind of permanent maintenance mode with a skeleton team. I think the way Destiny 2 has been going these last few months is how it's going to be in the future once that final big update comes out in June, if that still is even coming out in June. I don't know about these future expansions that they have announced, because Edge of Fate did not do well, and Renegades, despite a Star Wars crossover, did not do well, and right now community sentiment about the game is at an all-time low. And even if they were to release new expansions, as long as things like the Portal are involved, I don't know. I really don't see them reversing fortunes on Destiny 2 right now. So I think, especially with the lack of information about Destiny 2 from these financial reports that from Sony, it's not looking good. I hate to say it to the Destiny dudes out there, it's not looking good for that game and that IP. I don't see it. And then number 4, I think they are going to dramatically rework Marathon to make it much easier and more welcoming to casual players. I think they are going to scrap forced seasonal resets, and I think they are going to add in a dedicated PvE mode. If a dedicated PvE mode is not in at least the beta playtest or whatever they call it, the sponsored mode, whatever the hell you want to call it, by season 2, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if they don't try to experiment with some kind of dedicated PvE mode, because that is the number one thing that people are wanting Marathon to have. Regarding Marathon, however, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see a path forward for transforming Marathon into a popular and financially successful live service. I mean, even since I've done I did the live stream where I talked about the game. And that was like mid-April I did that, or slightly end of April I did that. It's gotten worse in the weeks since then. I mean, player bases are now dropping below Destiny 2, which, oh my god, which, wow. I was clearly dead wrong in my predictions for Marathon's short-term prospects, because I don't even think it's accurate right now to call Marathon a decent short-term success. Not with this alleged budget, not with the headcount Bungie currently has, not with the amount of extra money Sony has had to pour into Bungie to rescue their stupid asses, not with having to operate out of fucking super expensive location like Bellevue, Washington on the west coast of the United States, and not with the continuing funding that Marathon needs to survive and be reworked, to even have a chance of working. They're going to have to invest even more money into this after already investing a ton of money into it. Already investing a ton of money into it in the years before, when it was supposed to come out in September of 2025. Before the underwhelming alpha and the art theft scandal. Millions upon 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 millions of dollars just to be in this position yet again, where Sony is going to have to invest more millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars into it in order to even give it a chance to survive and thrive. And this is not, I've seen people say, well, this might be a Rainbow Six Siege type of situation. Marathon is not Rainbow Six. Marathon does not have that cachet. Marathon does not have the Final Fantasy XIV thing where they could get away with transforming the game from 1.0 to Realm Reborn, because they are not Final Fantasy. They don't have the Final Fantasy name. They don't have the Tom Clancy name. You know, it's obviously not a Concord or Highguard level failure. Obviously, anyone telling you otherwise is lying, but I would personally consider Marathon a financial, cultural, and historical failure for PlayStation. And I would actually go so far as to consider it almost a mercy and a sound decision if Sony pulled the plug on Marathon. It's not going to happen, but if I were in charge of PlayStation, I would dramatically restructure Bungie. I would recommit to Destiny as an IP instead of Marathon. I would plant the flag on Destiny being the thing that Bungie should be working on going forward. And I would have Bungie just go dark for at least 5 years to make a massive Destiny sequel for the next generation. Clearly, this is what the people want. This is what people want. They want the next big Destiny sequel. And instead of doing that, they're going to double down on Marathon, the game with much more limited appeal that already has kind of a stink on it and has low overall worldwide sentiment, where you can clearly tell just by looking at the numbers in the Steam charts that this game just does not have any worldwide appeal whatsoever. It just doesn't. This is a very West Coast, United States focused game. In conclusion, this is yet another self-inflicted, embarrassing punch to the face that Sony has to endure due to their insanely stupid and overzealous live service raging boner that Jim Ryan and Herman Hulse initiated at the beginning of the generation. And my final point for this video will be something I have said before, and I said it during the Marathon related live stream, but I think it bears repeating here. I find it bitterly ironic that Sony acquired and empowered Bungie due to their, quote, live service expertise, unquote. But now, Sony is having to clean up Bungie's shit-smearing mess because these dumb motherfuckers can't properly run their own live service business and currently have 2 dying live services on the vine. But no, please tell me what a good purchase Bungie was. Please tell me some more about how Marathon, being a fucking stupid $250 million live service extraction shooter, was a safer bet compared to them making a much more reasonably budgeted and tightly scoped 9 to 10 hour single player campaign with a limited suite of multiplayer offerings. You know, the thing that made Bungie a household name with Halo, Destiny, PvE focus with limited multiplayer suite. This whole Sony and Bungie situation is like a gang of clowns leading an even dumber gang of clowns. It's fucking painful to watch. It's been painful to watch for years. And I don't know how many times I can say to people, I told you so. I told you so. I fucking told you so. Because all Sony and Bungie have as fruits of their partnership are billions of wasted dollars, multiple dead projects, 2 rounds of layoffs, the biggest failure in PlayStation history with Concord, and 2 dying live services under Bungie itself. This has been the worst acquisition, in my opinion, probably in video game history. I don't know who at Bungie, I don't know who at PlayStation convinced this to happen, I got this to exist, but they need to be out on their fucking ass. No one should hire them ever again, because this has been nothing but a fucking humiliating train wreck. This has been just painful to watch. So, anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.